In this video, I want to take a look at how we can use a TI-84 calculator to solve for a bunch of the statistics that we talked about in Chapter 3, including the mean, the median, standard deviations, quartiles, all that good stuff. So I've got a picture of the calculator over here on the left, and I'm going to actually be able to go through and press the exact buttons and show you what you need to do this on your own calculator. It's very similar if you have a TI-83 or a slightly different model of graphing calculator. So hopefully this will work for most of you that have a graphing calculator. So the first thing I'm going to do, hopefully you can see my mouse here, is turn the calculator on. Once we've got it on, in this case, I don't even need to see this again. I just want to get to the main screen. So here's the main screen of the calculator. A lot of what we're going to be doing in this class involves using the statistics button. So hopefully that's kind of unsurprising, but I'm going to be using the stat button for all the stuff that we're talking about in Chapter 3. So I'm going to start by clicking that stat button. And once you see, once you click into there, you'll see three menu options along the top. There's Edit, Calc, and Tests. Edit is where we will handle the data that we're dealing with. It's where we'll be able to enter the data into tables and sort the data and stuff like that. Calc will perform a lot of the calculations that we need, and later on, towards the end of the semester, we'll be doing something called hypothesis tests and confidence intervals, and this is what we will use when we get to those sections at the end of the semester. But for now, I want to start by editing a list of data. You can control it with your arrow button here, or if you want, you can also just type the corresponding number. Notice that the menu options are numbered, so if I want to edit my list of data, I can either type 1, and it'll bring me to this list, or alternatively, I could have just scrolled down and then hit enter. When you hit the edit button and come to your lists, you'll see that we have multiple lists to hold multiple different sets of data. For right now, I'm going to just deal with this first list. Later down the line, we'll look at some examples of stuff like in Chapter 4 where we need to have two different lists for one problem. But for now, let's focus on just using one list. So I want to enter a set of data, and I'm just going to use some random numbers. So I'm going to say there's a 2, hit enter, and it'll take you to the next line at 8, 6, whatever, 5, 6, 9, 4, 7, 5, whatever. There's our list. If you use the arrow pad and go up and highlight the last number that we entered, you'll notice that it indicates that there were 9 total things entered in this list. So that's one useful thing you can use. If you want to know and make sure that you didn't accidentally miss anything when you were typing them into the list, you can go highlight the last number that was entered and see what position in the list it tells you that number is. And that way you can make sure if there were 9 numbers in the list I was trying to copy, then I can make sure that, oh, I didn't accidentally only enter 8, or I didn't accidentally type in an extra one and copy one twice. So in this case, I just made up this set of numbers, and I want to find some statistics related to them. One useful thing that we can do with this is sort the list to get them in order. So I'm going to hit the Stat button again to do that, and I want to go down to one of these options. Sort A stands for sort in ascending order from smallest to biggest. Sort D stands for sort in descending order from biggest to smallest. So I'm going to highlight the second one and hit enter. I want to sort list A, and or sort in ascending order, and it asks me, what do I want to sort? To pick what to sort, I want to go back and check just real quickly. I'll hit the stat button, look at my edit. I entered all of my data into list 1, L1. So if we go back to that main screen, I can see that I want to sort the data in list 1. If I look on the calculator for list 1, it's right here. You can see it in light blue on mine. It's the second option of the number 1 button. So I'm going to hit second 1, and it'll put L1 in there for me. And then I'm going to close my parentheses and hit enter, and it'll tell me it's done sorting the list. And now if I go back to that list by hitting stat again and edit, I can now see the list is sorted 2, 4, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7. it's now sorted in order, even though originally it was in totally random order. So it's all in order now. That can be really useful if you're trying to find, for example, the mode of a list of numbers. Once they're all grouped together like that, it's easy to spot, oh, there were 2 5s in a row, there were 2 6s. Those are the 2 modes in this particular case because they showed up more than once. The rest of the stuff that we're going to be doing is pretty much limited to one set of buttons that we need to press for chapter 3. So other than sorting the data, the rest that we're going to do, let me hit the stat button again, is under this calculations. So when I'm on the top, I'm going to hit the right arrow to go over the list of calculations, and this top option is one var stats, and that's what I want to select. So I'm going to hit enter, and it'll ask me what list I want to use. I want to use that same list where I entered everything, list 1. For the frequency list, I want to leave it blank. We could use this frequency list if we were dealing with like a frequency distribution and we had all of our, or like a histogram, and we had our class values listed here, or say the midpoints of those classes. And then down here, we would put the frequency list corresponding to the frequency of how many times each one of those categories showed up. And so I'm going to skip that for now. For now, we just entered all of our data into list 1. I'm going to leave the frequency list blank, and I'm going to go down and hit calculate and hit enter. And it now gives me all sorts of values. The first thing that it gives me is this X bar value. This X bar is the mean of that list. So it's our sample mean. You could also use mu for this. It doesn't distinguish between population and sample in that case. It's the same number either way. X bar is 5.777 repeating. It'll give me some stuff I don't need. It summed up all the numbers for me. It summed up the squares of all those numbers. Those can be useful if you're doing kind of like we did with the, or we made a table when we were finding the variance and standard deviation. If we were doing that by hand, this gives us some of those values. But we don't, in practice, really need these two things, the sigma x and the sigma x squared. The next thing we do need are the S and the sigma, Sx and sigma x. These ones, so just to be clear, let me write some of these down. X bar is the mean, and it's the formula is the same for the population versus sample, so it doesn't matter. But when we come down to these other ones, Sx and sigma x, Sx is the sample standard deviation, and sigma x is the population standard deviation. And you'll notice the two numbers are in fact different, right? 2.1-ish versus 1.98-ish. And the difference has to do with where we divide by n minus 1 versus n. So in this one, in the S value, we're dividing by n minus 1, so we get a slightly bigger number. In sigma x, it divides by n, where this is the number that I'm talking about, n. So in one case, it added up all the values, or all the differences squared, and then divided by 9. That was in the case of the population. And the other one, it divided by 8, n minus 1 for the sample. If we scroll down more, we'll see a bunch of other numbers that are useful. These numbers are hopefully obvious. Min and max are just the minimum and maximum values that were in that list. And these other ones right here, Q1 is equal to the first quartile. MED, that's the median, which is the same as the second quartile, as we discussed previously. And then Q3 is the third quartile. And if we include the min and the max in here with these, so the min x and max x, which I just left off, these things right here grouped together, these pieces make up our 5-number summary. So the min, first quartile, second quartile, third quartile, and the max are our 5-number summary. And we found all of these various things from the calculator. How would we find the variance? So as a side note, the variance. The calculator doesn't spit the variance out, but you've got to remember the variance is either s squared or sigma squared. So if we wanted to find the variance, all I would need to do is take the value from one of these two and actually square it. So it would be sx squared or sigma x squared. So if I wanted the variance from that list, the sample variance, I would go back up here. Here's the sample standard deviation. It's 2.108185107, and I would square that result, and we could figure out what the variance is. So I would square it, and we would get an actual number out of that. And do the same thing down here. If it was the population instead of the sample, we'd do the same thing with the 1.9876, whatever number it is, 1598, and we'd square that to get the result that we wanted. To square a number like that, let me just go back to the main screen here. So I've written it down. I'm going to go back to the main screen, and let's say we did want the sample variance. So what I would do is, you can use parentheses or not, it doesn't matter. I'm going to leave them off, but I would type in that number. So 2.108185107. And to square it, this button right here will square a number for you. So it just takes that number and multiplies it by itself. If I hit enter, there is the variance. The variance right here, this sample variance, would have wound up being 4.444, right? 4.4 repeating. So if on the homework you need to compute the variance and you're using the graphing calculator, you'll have to use the graphing calculator to compute the standard deviation, which is the thing we actually care about, and then back out the variance by taking that number and squaring it. So there's a quick rundown on an introduction to using this calculator. I'll make more videos like this throughout the semester as we come up on other topics, but this will cover pretty much everything that this calculator can do for you as far as Chapter 3 is concerned.